On this Halloween Monday, we're coming off a spooky performance from the Vikings yesterday, but at the end of the day, they got another win. We're breaking it down coming up on Superior Sports Talk.
Locked On Sports Minnesota Podcasts. It's endless Minnesota Vikings talk with the diverse voices of your local experts. Now it's Superior Sports Talk with KARE-11 sports anchor Reggie Wilson and Luke Inman. It's 30 minutes every day, and it's all the Minnesota sports you need. It's Superior Sports Talk, and it starts now.
Welcome in today to Superior Sports Talk. I'm not Luke Inman. I'm Sam Ekstrom in for Luke today. You can find me on The Ron Johnson Show and the Minnesota Football Party and on Twitter at Sam Ekstrom. And I'm joined by Reggie Wilson of KARE-11 Sports. He is at Reggie Wilson TV on Twitter. On today's show, we've got a big one coming up. A lot of Vikings talk. We're giving out game balls for Vikings Cardinals yesterday. Where is the Vikings' new place in the NFC power rankings? Just the NFL circle of respect. Do they have it now after a fifth straight win? And I'm going to give Reggie a hard time for how bad his Lakers are after losing to the Wolves over the weekend. But that's later, Reggie. We'll put that off until the end.
Come on.
Yeah, well,
give
the Wolves did not win last night, so we're going to focus on the W on Friday. But before we talk Vikings, a reminder to check out our show on Amazon Fire or Roku. You can get not just Superior Sports Talk, but Ron Johnson, Minnesota Football Party on those apps. Download them, watch them. Big interview with Josh Metellus last week on the Ron Johnson Show and a bunch of other good stuff. Make sure to check that out. Today's episode brought to you by betonline.net as well. The Vikings covered yesterday, and they are 6-1, Reggie. This is an improbable place for them to be in now with 5 one-possession wins. They, again, have to come from behind in the second half after losing a lead, and they end up beating the Cardinals 34-26. Reggie, I want your first game ball. Who you giving it to from yesterday's win for the Vikes?
The first game ball has to go to Za'darius. Like, the dude was a monster yesterday. 3-sack performance. Hurts his knee, said he fell on it, felt weird. It was a little bit of a scary moment yesterday because he was down on the field for quite a bit of time. Got up, walked off in his own strength, ended up coming back into the game. We saw that a couple times yesterday. Adam Thielen went out yesterday. It was like, oh no, like it doesn't look good. Then he ends up coming out, making some nice catches in some big moments. And then Dalvin Cook, still not really sure. He's not really sure what happened. Dalvin had this like gaping hole on his face yesterday when we were talking to him in the post game. And it was just like, Dalvin, what happened to your face? He was like, I don't even know. And it was just like, okay, well, fine, all right, whatever. He's like, I gotta watch the film.
Popping a zit after the game, maybe that's it.
That's what I'm saying. It was just like, and it was weird because it looked like it kept getting bigger as time went along, and so it was interesting because Za'Darius kind of limped over to us a little bit in that post game press conference at that TV screen in the locker room, and he talked about how, he just felt charged up, but it was great to see him come back and really make that play at the end. How about 2 walk-off sacks to end the game? One from Za'Darius, his third of the game, and then the last one from Harrison Phillips to basically end it. And so I think the first game ball has to go to Za'Darius for that performance yesterday. It is not easy. Kyler Murray looks like my dog when she runs. Like they run the same. You just never know where they're going to go. They're like zigzagging all over the place. And it's not easy to keep contained on him. We saw them really struggle at times yesterday. He's just a slippery dude, and when he breaks contain, he's dangerous. But to get him down on the ground 3 times, it could have been the 4th time because remember Za'Darius got that sack yesterday, but then they said that the play was dead because Arizona called a timeout. But it was so loud. Yeah. It was so loud in the place that you couldn't even hear that the play had gotten called dead. And so the first game ball definitely goes to Za'Darius.
Yeah, hard to disagree with you on that. I think from a defensive standpoint, I would give a second game ball to Patrick Peterson, starting with Saturday night when he gets together with Jordan Hicks, the other former Cardinals captain, and they give a speech to the team and talk about setting the tone and hitting them in the mouth right away. And if you remember, Reggie, was it the first or second play from scrimmage? Peterson corrals a guy along the sideline, tackles him hard in front of the Cardinals bench, gets a flag for it, and gets in a jawing match with somebody on the Cardinals sideline. So other than the flag, which isn't great, he did set the tone with the physicality. And from moment one of that game, he was chirping. He was active. Whenever he was challenged, he was rising to the occasion, almost had a couple picks. He was really effective in shutting down any rushers that were on his side of the field. Just a great throwback Patrick Peterson game. And I kept thinking, well, where was this last year when they played the Cardinals? I don't remember any hard feelings. I just remember him being respectful and kind of being above it. And I got to thinking, you know what? The Jordan Hicks factor changed it, because Hicks is another guy who was highly respected at one point in the Cardinals organization. He was a captain there, and they didn't re-sign him either. So he and Peterson are now in this place. They both have this similar experience. They both played together in Arizona and then were not brought back. So I think they kind of fed off of each other. And it was pretty cool also then that Jordan Hicks got to come up with that huge tackle on 4th and 4 on the second to last drive of the game to force the turnover on downs. I think Patrick Peterson gets a game ball for setting the tone and setting up that defense for a big splashy day where they made a lot of huge plays.
Yeah, and you know what was interesting about that? Patrick Peterson, if he was a wrestler, he cut a heck of a promo yesterday in the locker room after the game. Oh my goodness. I put a mashup together on Twitter last night just of the different things that he had to say. You know, he's like, look, they tried to tell me I was old, I'm washed up. He's calling out whoever it was that had the email that told him that the team would be better off if he's not on the team. I don't know what type of weird motivational tactic they were doing with Patrick Peterson. I think that's probably what it was, with them printing out the email criticism and putting it on his locker in his chair. I think that they were trying to, I don't know, some type of like motivation to him. Like, hey, this is what people are saying, you know, show him that it's wrong. And he totally didn't take it that way. He took it as some disrespect, especially from a fan base where he put in 10 years of really solid football for them. And he's like, man, that's how you guys are going to do me, like, after everything that I've done here in this organization. He just was super, super spicy. There was a time where the defense made a play and they all kind of, you know, gathered together in the end zone like they usually do after like a turnover. And he runs up and he's all in the screen. He's like, call me, call me, call me, you know, bleep, bleep. Like, you could tell he was saying some very choice words, but, you know, the sound wasn't up on the Jumbotron. And so after the game, he's like, yeah, I'm still waiting on Steve Keim to call me. And I'm like, oh, so you got beef with the Cardinals GM.
Some WWE stuff going on here.
Yeah. And so it was very, very interesting. He picked at Kyler Murray a little dig on him and you know, his video game playing. There was a pick with Harrison Smith yesterday, and Harrison hadn't really had the ball in his hand for 5 seconds. And Patrick Peterson is dancing. He's doing the little gyrations like Jamal Williams did a few weeks ago. Just dancing, but like, he was charged up. And what was interesting was during the week, I believe it was on Thursday, we tried to get something out of him about this game. He's like, oh, you know, maybe last year it was, you know, this or that, whatever, you know, but now it's 2 years. You know, I've been here for a couple years now. Like, just another game on the schedule. It's just another game on the schedule. He kept saying that. And then Sunday, it's like, really? Really, P2? Was it just another game on the schedule? Because surely didn't feel like that. Like he was chirping from the very start, John at Cliff, John at D-Hop, John at everybody. And it was just like, all right, you clearly feel some kind of way. And after the game, he showed that he kept some receipts.
Za'Darius did the exact same thing when they played the Packers. Downplayed it. And then I think he did an interview with, I would say, Ty Dunn, the writer, just before the game, and he laid out all of his grievances. And then he had a huge game. And it blows me away how guys always rise to the occasion when they play their former team. Xavier Woods did the same thing last year when the Vikings played the Cowboys, had a massive performance when he felt slighted. Whenever these guys walk in free agency, you always got to watch out when you play them. Offensive game balls coming up after we tell you about betonline.net, your number one source for betting football and the start of the new basketball season. Find all the latest, whether it's player developments, team matchups, news, or podcasts. And you can get MMA, boxing, and golf. You've got the niche sports. You've got the major sports. You've got everything. BetOnline.net. Early look at that Vikings Commanders line. Vikings favored by 3.5 in Washington. That game still just makes me nervous, Reggie. We can get into that. Vikings by 3.5 at betonline.net. Check it out on your laptop, your mobile device. BetOnline, where the game starts. Okay, Reggie, we gave out a couple defensive game balls. Let's get into the offense, because I think a lot of guys got to wear the hero hat in this game. You had 5 different touchdown scorers. Kirk Cousins was solid enough. Some unsung heroes, KJ Osborne, a big touchdown catch, Johnny Munt, his first ever. Who you giving the offensive game ball to?
My first offensive game ball has to go to Dalvin Cook, the chef. First game over 100 yards this season. I remember a couple weeks ago we talked to him, and he had a solid offensive performance. It was the last home game. He scored 2 touchdowns. And we talked to Dalvin about how he felt about his performance, and he was just like, man, I was all right. He's like, I didn't play all that great. And one of his teammates, one of the linemen, they were like, Dalvin, what do you had 2 touchdowns. He was like, yeah, but I only had 90-something yards, man. Like, that's not going to cut it. Finally gets over 100, 111, gets a touchdown as well. I think he is starting to find his groove, and I think Kevin O'Connell is starting to find a way to really get him involved. Like, we finally saw like a couple chunk running plays from Dalvin Cook. Like, this is the Dalvin Cook that we have grown accustomed to and that we are used to seeing. And I think, Kevin O'Connell had to really kind of figure out some things as far as trying to get him the ball and also trying to run and make it creative where it's not predictable. When it's first and 10 and, you may take a loss on second down, is a little predictable that, hey, we're about to run the football. Also, that Arizona Cardinals defense was just not great yesterday as far as the run game goes. And the line was just kind of like pushing those guys around. And so I'm sure he will give a lot of credit to his offensive line for the game ball that we're giving him. But at the end of the day, his legs churned for the 111 yards, and I think he deserves the first game ball from us for this offense.
Yeah, and I thought his 30-yarder, the run where Garrett Bradbury ended up getting a taunting call, I thought that was vintage Dalvin, and we haven't necessarily seen that a lot this year. I think he's been really conscious, and I said this on the postcast yesterday. I think he's been super conscious of getting tackled with that shoulder, how he wants to fall when he gets tackled, and I just think he's been in his head, and it's reduced his ability to get those explosive runs. But if you look at the way he finished that run, he blew over Budda Baker, just stormed into him. And I thought that was the type of violence that we're used to seeing from Dalvin with doling out punishment as he's running. So I think that's a good game ball. I think I have to end up giving mine to Kirk because, number one, he didn't have a 100-yard receiver in this game. Jefferson came close. Madison with a touchdown and Munt and Osborne. There wasn't one necessarily standout performance from anybody, with the exception of maybe Dalvin, who you gave yours to. But I think Kirk is pushed over the top because of his 17-yard touchdown run. And overall, a higher level of mobility in this game than we're used to seeing. And I loved his recap of the 17-yard touchdown after the game. He said, wow, I didn't realize how much people like it when I run. And we're all thinking, yeah, Kirk, because you're terrible at it. You never do it. And there's a reason why you don't. So he said, the offensive line told me it was the greatest thing they'd ever seen. And I kind of agree. It was he outran two linebackers to the corner, and then with the athleticism on the dive for the end zone, that was a fun moment. And Kirk, it seemed like that propelled him, Reggie. Like, didn't it seem like he was a little more wiggly throughout the game?
Yeah.
It sort of jogged his memory, like, on how to move around the pocket. And I don't know if he made any spectacular plays for the rest of the game like that, but he gave himself a chance to extend some plays, which could suit him and the offense pretty well going forward this season.
Hasn't done that much. You know, usually when the rush comes, he just kind of folds up. He's like, yeah, you guys go ahead and take me down. Make sure you kind of nestle me down, though. Don't slam me, okay? And it's interesting. Yesterday, he was like, look, I'm just going to, move around the pocket. Like, he had a couple plays where he just was like, all right, I'm just going to take off and run. You got Kyler Murray on the other side. I can run too, okay? I can scoot. What was interesting was on that 17-yard touchdown run, we're watching it up in the press box, and he's got this number 94 coming at him from kind of like in front of him to the side. Marcus Golden, M-I-Z-Z-O-U, coming from behind. And I'm like, oh, this is not going to end well, because Kirk was kind of holding that ball out. And I just saw a vision of Marcus Golden just like catching up to him and swatting the ball out from behind.
Boom.
And all of a sudden, I'm like, Kirk is running away from Marcus Golden. I was like, okay, he's got the first down. I was like, oh, shoot, is Kirk about to score? And then he dives. It's like, whoa. And it's interesting because we talked about on this show about how Kirk doesn't necessarily like to get off schedule. Like, that's not his thing. What Joe Burrow does is not what Kirk does or prefers to do. He likes to, when his back foot hits the ground, and maybe he makes one or two reads after that, but like, he's not hanging in the pocket for any long period of time. He wants to get that ball out of there, to the point where if that clock has ticked too long, he's dumping it off. Whether or not they need a third and long or whatever, he's going to take the profit, because he's like, look, I'm not doing this. And so it was interesting to see him actually try to extend plays yesterday. And I think it's interesting. We're still waiting on a 300-yard performance from Kirk Cousins. Kyler Murray had one on the other side. But Kirk is just turning in these steady performances. He hasn't thrown for more than 2 touchdowns in a game this season. He's gotten close to going towards 300, but hasn't gone over 300 yards. Like, we haven't seen one of those just like monster performances from him. But at the end of the day, it seems like every game, especially on this 5-game winning streak, we are dissecting his performance and saying like, oh, well, he just made the plays when they needed to be made. And that's winning quarterback play. It's not necessarily the most flashy, but he is doing what needs to be done to help this team win football games. In that fourth quarter, when it seemed like momentum was shifting, when they had the 2-point lead, had to punt, Greg Dorsch muffs the punt. They get the ball back. Kirk leads them right down, ending in that was a lovely pass he threw to KJ Osborne, drifting out of the end zone for the touchdown. And it was just like, well, he made the plays that needed to be made when they needed to be made. And it's just something to be said about a quarterback who does that.
Yeah, I'm going to make up a word here. So, the Vikings play complementary football as well as I've seen a Vikings team do this year. They're always – the special teams is picking up the offense. The defense is picking everybody up, big fourth quarter turnovers and whatnot. So last year was insultory football. It's like the offense would make a big play. Oh, the defense, we're going to insult you. We're just going to give up a game-winning touchdown drive. It was the exact opposite of complementary football. And the 180 that's been created, Kirk Cousins couldn't even explain it yesterday. Someone asked him, like, how are you winning every close game? And he said, I don't know. I don't know what the difference is. Jordan Hicks got a similar question, and he said leadership from the top down. And I think that's fair to say. There's more confidence in this team. They're better coached on all facets of the game. And hey, the Vikings are 6-1. So impromptu here, Reggie, I have a what does it mean question for you.
It's time to tell us, what does it mean?
Vikings are 6-1. They have the second best record now in the NFC after the Giants lose yesterday. What does this 5-game winning streak mean for the Vikings in terms of national respect, in terms of where they stand in the NFL?
I think it means that they are going to have a little bit more attention now. What's interesting, though, is yesterday, Za'Darius Smith, when he was talking to us in the post game, he literally said, he's like, look, we're 6-1, but I feel like nobody is talking about us. That's all right. We'll continue to be the underdogs, and we'll continue to, play well and do what we have to do until people start noticing. Honestly, people have been noticing. I follow a lot of national people on Twitter, and the Vikings are mentioned every week, whether it's Albert Breer, whether it's Tom Pelissero. That's not fair for Tom because he actually lives here, so he's a little bit more in tune. But, whether it's, Peter King or Pro Football Talk or, any people, Dan Orlovsky on NFL Live, like people are actually talking about the Vikings. Colin Cowherd. People are talking about the Vikings. It's just, people are not beating the drum, I think, because as a fan base, as a society, I don't know how to explain it, but people are used to the Vikings, like, kind of letting people down. And it's interesting because I always look at where I came from, which was Cincinnati, and I kind of make these parallels because I was there at the tail end of Marvin Lewis, and that thing had really just gone rancid. Like it was sour. The Bengals were one of the oldest teams in the NFL, and it just wasn't going well. And then all of a sudden, Zach Taylor comes in. First couple years, awful. But they flipped the roster. He's a rah-rah guy, just super captain positive guy all the time. And to the point where it was just like, dude, this team is doo-doo. Like, you keep trying to make us see that, this team smells like roses, but, like, they just lost this game by 25. Like, this team is doo-doo. And he's just like, no, I think we're close. I think we're really getting there. I think, we're when we start turning this thing around, you'll know. You'll remember this moment. And we're like, this dude is crazy. And then all of a sudden the Bengals are in the Super Bowl, and you're like, dang, like Zach was right. And it's something to be said about a culture shift. Maybe the thing just really got stale with Mike Zimmer, and KOC's come in with his, just over enthusiasm, it seems sometimes. Really confident about the team, really confident in his abilities. It's interesting because he's a guy that, and this was something subtle, but something that really kind of feels like it set the tone for just who he is. That first week, when the slime came, KOC was like, look, I'm going to take the slime. It's on me. You guys keep performing. I'm going to take the slime. I'm going to take one for the team. And that just kind of seemed to set the tone, because every week, if you listen to his post-game locker room, when he's talking to the team after they win, one of the very first things that are out of his mouth is, hey, I got to be better. I know I have to be better as a play caller, as a head coach, but what you guys went out there and did, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But he goes first. He's like, look, I have to be better. A coach that takes accountability right off the bat before he even starts to, talk about what they have to do as a team to be better. He's talking about himself. And I think that is what has really set the tone for this team. They're like, look, we got a leader that holds everybody accountable, including himself. Because this team is just different. There's a youthful jubilance about this team. And I think, to your point, Sam, there's just a leadership difference here. And that is what makes this team a little bit more dangerous, because they're a team that actually enjoys each other. Dalvin Cook said, "Hey, I enjoy coming to work every day." And that seems to be palpable around the team. And that's from this leadership, holding everyone accountable, including himself. And that's something different than they've seen the last 8 years.
And last thing for me on this, and then we'll get into our Gimme One segment. Success is always on a curve. You do not have to be the 85 Bears or the 72 Dolphins to win a Super Bowl. The league is playing a little down this year across the board. There's a lot more parity. So success this year for the Vikings may not mean they are the best playoff team of all time. The Super Bowl winner this year is going to win a Super Bowl, and they will get credit for it, despite probably having some more mediocre teams that they had to beat along the way. And that's legal. That's okay. And I think it might be time to admit that, hey, the Vikings are, in this current NFL landscape, they are one of the 5 best teams in the league. Even if it doesn't always look like it, they are playing better than almost everybody in football this year, and that means something. We've got our Gimme One segment coming up next. Want to thank people for making Superior Sports Talk their first listen today, but for your second listen, check out Locked On Sports Today. From the games that matter the most to the biggest stories in sports, go behind the scoreboard and behind the scenes with local experts and insights only Locked On can provide. Locked On Sports Today, available on this app, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcasts. Time for Gimme One, Reggie. We're going to go back to Friday night. I know you're a Lakers guy, so I got to ask you, Wolves beat the Lakers Friday and sent them to 0-5 at the time. Since then, the Wolves lost to San Antonio on Sunday. They are 4-3 currently. But I want your take. Number one, give me one word to describe Wolves-Lakers on Friday.
I don't know if this is a word, but meh. It's just so early this season. The Wolves are trying to figure it out. The Lakers, I don't know if they can figure it out. But I think the Lakers are not a very good basketball team. And the Wolves are doing to them what they should do, which is beat them. They kind of hung around a little bit, and tried to make a game of it. But at the end of the day, you have given the keys to the car to this Wolves team to be one of the better teams in the league. And what they need to do is beat inferior teams like the Lakers. And at this point, the Lakers are an inferior team. Now, what is the problem here is I don't know who's inferior and who's not with some of these opponents that they've played, because the Jazz have been good. The Spurs have been good. The Spurs let go of a top prospect guy who they really were high on in Josh Primo because of an unfortunate situation. But like, they let him go, and he was kind of the future. And they are still just Keldon Johnson and the dude that looks like Cisco and all those guys out there, like, they are crushing things. And the Wolves got down. I think they got the deficit down to like 4 at one point last night against the Spurs, and then it just ballooned again. Like, this Spurs team is tough, man. And I think what's really kind of discouraging is this Wolves defense. So far, they just have not figured it out in their rotations, in their perimeter defense. Rudy's gonna, be a stalwart in the inside, but I still think they're working through a few things, and it's a work in progress.
Yeah, I think they're missing Malik Beasley more than they thought they would, especially from the 3-point line, because that was his game. It was high volume, high percentage 3-point shooting, and Bryn Forbes hasn't quite replaced that, at least from what we've seen yet. All right, Reggie, Gophers beat Rutgers 31-0 on Saturday. Give me one reason to stay invested in this Gophers team, now sitting at 5-3, 2-3 in the Big Ten.
Well, I mean, if you like, bowl games, they're still alive for, Music City Bowl, Pinstripe Bowl, or, whatever bowl you like to think. with the losses that this team has endured, I don't know that you expect them to play in anything too meaningful moving forward. But if you're a guy who enjoys, Gophers football and Big Ten football, like they do have some success that could still be ahead of them. But I think when you're thinking about like the ceiling of this team, they've lost too many games at this point, I think, to really do like something that we really expect, battle for the Big Ten, battle for a Rose Bowl or something like that. I think that's a little bit out of the reach now, but yeah, they still may, get a nice little bowl game, close to the new year, and just ride it on out. You can count on Mo to continue his streak. He's the dog. But I think they beat Rutgers, which they were supposed to. I don't know that you were expecting a darn shutout, though. Goodness gracious. But that gives you a little confidence that they could possibly run the table the rest of the way. But those losses still sting.
Yeah, I don't think I'm going to tune back in mentally and emotionally to the Gophers until the trophy games. Until I know there's a trophy with Nebraska. I know it does. It's not a real trophy. That's a fake trophy. Iowa and Wisconsin, end of the year, those games will matter regardless of record, and I'll tune into those games. Nebraska and Northwestern don't interest me. Best case scenario, the Gophers go 9-3. That's a nice record, but I think in a season that had Big Ten championship game appearance expectations, you needed to do more, and that ship probably has sailed. Last one, hockey question. Give me one take on the state of the Wild after their weekend 2 games, a loss against Detroit and a shootout win against Chicago.
You know what? So many have kind of pontificated, if you will, that the Wild won't make the playoffs. I don't know that they're a team that's going to string together 5, 6, 7 wins in a row, but I think that they're going to be highly entertaining until the very end. This team is scoring goals, man. Like, that is fun to watch. I'm not a hockey guy by trade. I'm kind of learning the way of the land as I come up here. And I know, Sam, you're a huge hockey guy. You do a great job with the play-by-play. And I'm like enjoying seeing all these goals scored, because like what I don't like is a 1-0 game. And I'm just like, what am I watching? And, I still don't understand why hockey players fight and why the refs just allow them to pummel each other's faces in. I'm like, why is that a thing? He lost a tooth because you let him just punch him in the mouth. I don't understand that. But I think as I'm kind of like looking on at this team, man, like they are fun to watch this year. I know Flowers giving up many more goals than maybe we expect him to, and this might be an interesting year for him. But they won on that shootout last night, and you're just like, wow, like, man, this team is scoring goals. Like, they're going to be fun. I'm not really sure what that means as far as like their playoff chances, but we're going to enjoy watching this team this year. But we're also probably going to be pulling our hair out at some of these games as well.
Yeah, the early season defensive woes, giving up 20 goals in 3 games, that's probably going to be an outlier when we look back. That was always going to get better. Marc-Andre Fleury's too good to allow that on a regular basis. And this is just a deep team. I mean, they've got 4 lines where they have dudes that can score, and Matt Boldy looks really good. So I think he's at least giving you some of what you lost with Kevin Fiala, and I think they're going to be fine. It's not that hard to make the playoffs in the NHL when you have that much talent, and if you just sneak into the playoffs, anything can happen. So I'm not panicking at all about this Wild team. They're 4-1 through the first 9 games. That's Superior Sports Talk today. Make sure to subscribe, like, comment on YouTube, Locked On Sports Minnesota, and download the Amazon Fire and Roku apps to watch all of Locked On Sports Minnesota shows on the big screen on your 80-inch TV. He's Reggie Wilson of Care 11 at Reggie Wilson TV. I'm Sam Ekstrom. Find me on the Ron Johnson Show and Minnesota Football Party at Sam Ekstrom on Twitter. Thanks for watching. Luke is back tomorrow. Until then, so long.
Be blessed. Spread love today.